What happens when a young girl is told that writing is not for women? What happens when publishers reject her stories for being too African? And what happens when that same woman's words end up changing how millions of people see Africa, feminism, and storytelling? This is the story of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why her voice matters now more than ever. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie was born on September 15, 1977 in Enugu, Nigeria. She was the fifth of 6 children in an Igbo family. Her father, James Woye Adichie, was a professor and the first professor of statistics at the University of Nigeria. Her mother, Grace Ifoma, was the first female registrar at the same university. You might think that growing up in an educated family meant Chimamanda had full support for her dreams. But even in educated Nigerian families, there were rules about what women should and shouldn't do. From a young age, Chimamanda loved stories. She would read everything she could find. British novels, American novels, Enid Blyton, Roald Dahl. She devoured books like someone starving for food. But all the books she read were about white children. White children who ate apples. White children who played in the snow. White children whose lives looked nothing like hers. Young Chimamanda began to think that stories could only be about white people. She thought that African children like her were not worthy of being in books. So when she started writing her own stories at age 7, she wrote about white children with blue eyes eating apples in the snow. Even though she had never seen snow, even though she had never eaten an apple, even though she had beautiful brown skin and lived in hot, sunny Nigeria. It wasn't until she discovered African writers like Chinua Achebe and Kamara Lay that everything changed. She read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe and realized, oh my God, people who look like me, who live like me, can be in books too. That discovery transformed her. She started writing stories about Nigerian children, stories about life in Nsukka where she grew up, stories that reflected her reality. But when Chimamanda told people she wanted to be a writer, the responses were discouraging. Her aunts would say, "Writing? That's not a real job. What will you do for money?" Male relatives would say, "You're a woman. You should focus on getting married and having children. Let the men do the writing." Even some teachers at school discouraged her. One teacher told her, "Chimamanda, you're a smart girl. Why waste your talent on stories? Study medicine or law, something respectable." But Chimamanda couldn't stop writing. Stories poured out of her like water from a broken pipe. She wrote in notebooks, she wrote on scraps of paper, she wrote whenever and wherever she could. Her mother noticed and secretly encouraged her. Her mother would say, "Don't listen to them. If writing makes you happy, keep writing." At 19, Chimamanda left Nigeria to study in the United States. She enrolled at Drexel University in Philadelphia to study communications and political science, but her real goal was to write. America was a shock. For the first time in her life, Chimamanda was a minority. She was black, she was African, she had an accent. People treated her differently. One white American student asked her, "Do you know how to use a stove?" Chimamanda was confused. "Of course I know how to use a stove. Why would you ask that?" The student said, "Well, you're from Africa. I thought you all lived in huts and cooked on fire." Chimamanda was speechless. She realized that many Americans had no idea what Africa was really like. They thought the entire continent was one big jungle with starving children and wild animals. This experience planted a seed in Chimamanda's mind. She thought, "I needed to write stories that show the real Africa. Not the Africa of pity and stereotypes, but the Africa of complexity, beauty, and normalcy." So, she started writing her first novel. She wrote about Nigeria, she wrote about the Biafran War, she wrote about love, loss, politics, and family. But when she sent a manuscript to American publishers, they rejected it. One publisher said, "This is too Nigerian. American readers won't understand it." Another said, "Can you make it more universal? Maybe set it in America?" Chimamanda was frustrated. She thought, "Why should I change my story to make white people comfortable? Why can't African stories be told as they are?" She kept submitting, rejection after rejection after rejection. Some publishers didn't even bother to respond. There were nights when Chimamanda sat in her small apartment in America crying. She thought, maybe they're right. Maybe nobody wants to read African stories. But then she remembered her mother's words. If writing makes you happy, keep writing. So she kept going. In 2003, after years of rejections, a small publisher finally took a chance on her. Her debut novel, Purple Hibiscus, was published. The book was an immediate success. Critics praised it. Readers loved it. It won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book. Suddenly, people were paying attention to this young Nigerian writer. But Chimamanda didn't stop there. In 2006, she published her second novel, Half of a Yellow Sun. The book told the story of the Biafran War through the eyes of ordinary Nigerians. It was a masterpiece. The book won the Orange Prize for Fiction, one of the most prestigious literary awards in the world. Chimamanda, at just 29 years old, had become a literary star. But what made Chimamanda truly famous wasn't just her novels, it was her voice. In 2009, Chimamanda gave a TED Talk titled The Danger of a Single Story. In it, she talked about how we often reduce people, countries and cultures to a single story. She talked about how Africa is often reduced to poverty, war and disease, ignoring the complexity and diversity of the continent. She said, "The single story creates stereotypes, and the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story." That TED Talk went viral. It has been viewed over 30 million times. It is taught in schools and universities around the world. Chimamanda had found her voice, and the world was listening. In 2012, Chimamanda gave another TED Talk, this time titled We Should All Be Feminists. In it, she talked about growing up in Nigeria and how gender expectations limited both men and women. She talked about how women are taught to make themselves smaller, to apologize for their ambition, to shrink so that men can feel comfortable. She said, "Culture does not make people. People make culture. If it is true that the full humanity of women is not our culture, then we can and must make it our culture." That talk also went viral. It was turned into a book. Beyoncé sampled it in her song Flawless. Suddenly, Chimamanda was not just a writer. She was a global feminist icon. In 2013, Chimamanda published her third novel, Americanah. The book told the story of a young Nigerian woman navigating race, identity, and love in America and Nigeria. Americanah became a global bestseller. It won numerous awards. It was praised by critics as one of the best novels of the decade. Chimamanda had done what many said was impossible. She had become a best-selling author while staying true to her African identity. She never watered down her stories. She never made them more palatable for Western audiences. She told African stories in African voices, and the world embraced them. Today, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is one of the most celebrated authors in the world. Her books have been translated into over 30 languages. She has won countless awards. She has been featured on the cover of major magazines. She has spoken at the United Nations. But more importantly, she has changed the conversation. She has shown that African stories matter. She has shown that women's voices matter. She has shown that you don't have to conform to be successful. Chimamanda is also a fashion icon. She wears beautiful African prints with pride. She refuses to straighten her natural hair to fit Western beauty standards. She uses her platform to celebrate African culture. When young African girls see Chimamanda, they see possibility. They see that they don't have to abandon their identity to succeed. They see that their stories are valuable. They see that their voices matter. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's story teaches us powerful lessons. First, representation matters. Seeing herself in Chinua Achebe's books changed Chimamanda's life. Second, don't change your story to fit someone else's expectations. Chimamanda refused to make her novels less African. Third, rejection is not the end. Every publisher who rejected her was wrong. Fourth, use your voice for more than yourself. Chimamanda uses her platform to advocate for feminism and African representation. Fifth, success doesn't require you to abandon your identity. Chimamanda succeeded by being authentically herself. From a girl who was told women don't write, to a global literary icon whose words have inspired millions. From being told her stories were too African to having those same stories taught in universities worldwide, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie proved that the world needs diverse voices, that African stories are universal stories, and that women can speak truth to power. So, what did you learn from Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible African success stories. Next week, we're bringing you the story of Eliud Kipchoge, the Kenyan runner who broke the 2-hour marathon barrier that scientists said was impossible. You don't want to miss it. Thank you for watching, and remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and the world needs to hear what you have to say.